Countless great works of art from around the world can often trace their inspirational and technical roots to a powerful source of spirituality. While this crucial catalyst for artistic inspiration has continuously evolved, being diluted and replaced by contemporary and often commercial ideals, a few artists have managed to uniquely retain and capture the essence of man's search for enlightenment. This elegant and sweeping mission is what drew me to researching the Kano painting school of medieval Japan. The Kano school drew upon Zen principles and ideals of conception and composition originating in ancient China, but executed with a distinctly Japanese style. The school's founder, Kano Masanobu, was a master of traditional Zen painting style, but it was his son, Kano Motonobu, who made it his own. While still classified as Zen Buddhist art, Motonobu's subtle innovations and masterful talent gave his work a broader societal appeal, rather than just to Zen practitioners and devotees, cementing the Kano school's name in the annals of history. For the sake of analysis, I have chosen to observe and dissect, if you will, three of my favorite paintings attributed to Kano Motonobu. The first, and perhaps his grandest work, is his series of 4 hanging scrolls, which were originally sliding door panels, titled Zen Patriarchs. For the sake of this video, we will consider these series as a single piece. According to my sources, the series depicts the different Enlightenment experiences of Chan patriarchs of the Tang dynasty. Probably created around 1513 for a Buddhist monastery in Kyoto, the painting reflects the cultural landscape in which it was created, and was likely designed to appeal to the tastes of those monks or wealthy elites who commissioned it. It is important to note that the Kano school could not operate on spiritual fulfillment alone, of course. Painting was their means of livelihood as well as a form of artistic expression. This is evident in the figures portrayed, which at the time was typical of Zen art, but in a somewhat retro manner, as those interested in the matter harkened back to the original Zen Buddhist figure paintings from China a few centuries earlier, but sought to recreate their grandeur in a Japanese way. The panels are stylistically dominated by Chinese ink landscape painting, which has a very natural, somewhat realistic feel, and it is the continuous spanning of that landscape which symbolizes the historical unity of the figures portrayed. Simultaneously contrasting and complementing this naturalistic aesthetic are Motonobu's signature, more surreal styles, seen in his scalloped clouds and boldly painted rocks, for example, as well as his striking use of color. His use of color was perhaps his most significant stylistic contribution to the Kano school as a whole, and was what differentiated his work most drastically from that of his father, Masanobu. The contributors of the Awakening catalog of Zen figure painting, which served as a primary source for my research, captured the essence of Zen patriarchs and indeed many of Motonobu's works, describing the series as a boldly conceived stage on which figures play out classic narratives of awakening. The second series, simply titled Farming, is most likely an earlier work of Motonobu and his students, which had remained in the imperial collections until the late 19th century. The 2 sliding door panels, now remounted as hanging scrolls, depict the people of a small rural village at work. The left panel shows figures engaged in weaving, and the right in silkworm cultivation. The small structures in which they work are set in the foreground of a spanning landscape of hills and crop fields, and are joined visually by a central tree. The warm sepia-orange colors, along with the tree's leaves, suggest to me a spring or summer scene. The 4 seasons were an especially popular subject in the period when Motonobu lived, and were taught by the Kano school to be held in mind by painters at work. As in most, if not all Zen Buddhist painting, large upper portions would be intentionally left open, blank, or nondescript. This was a spiritual space, reserved for higher level of existence, and in many ways embodies the nature of Zen itself. When depicting a being having reached a significant level of enlightenment, for example, this space would sometimes surround or envelop their image, serving as a more dominant focal point than the figures themselves. Some art scholars and historians who've written about the Farming series suggest that the bushwork lacks the strength and vivaciousness of Motonobu, and may primarily be the work of one of his students. While Kano Motonobu often worked in series, he still produced many singular paintings, such as Kanzen and Jitoku. As the title given suggests, it depicts with great skill the eccentric figures of those 2 Chinese men, culturally and possibly historically ingrained in Zen painting. According to my sources, both men were said to have been recluses on Mount Tiantai during the Tang dynasty, and potentially the reincarnations of the Buddhist deities Monju and Fugen, respectively. The 2 men stand underneath a mountain pine, joyfully reading a scroll of poetry. Historically, Kanzen had existing poetry attributed to him, so it is likely he who holds the scroll. Jitoku carries a broom which, according to my sources, represents his life of menial chores, which would be appropriate considering his presumed childhood as an orphan at the monastery on Tiantai. Their hair is ill-kempt and their toenails long, showing a degree of nonconformity as necessary in the pursuit of enlightenment. It was this denial of convention which they came to symbolize, and what made them a desired subject in Zen Buddhist painting. Unlike many of Motonobu's paintings, Kanzen and Jitoku are done void of color, opting instead for shades of black ink that marble and fade on the paper, lending texture and depth. The lines on the men's robes are bold, but collectively, the piece has a soft, jovial aesthetic, with much space intentionally left blank to shut out the material world, just as those figures were known to do in practice. Kano Motonobu was a highly skilled professional painter, one who truly mastered traditional style but saw the virtue in mastering his own. He was fluent in indigenous Japanese painting styles, contemporary Chinese court painting, and ink painting. This broad technical knowledge, coupled with Zen Buddhist ideals, allowed him to transcend into a spiritual realm of artistic inspiration and bring back images ranging from intensively detailed to elegantly simple. In doing so, he laid the foundation for others to follow, and did so directly as artist and studio manager of the now legendary Kano Painting School.